Yeah. Well, that seems
I'm sure it really helps. Yeah. So I like honestly kept it. I'll try.
It's good food stuff.
Yeah.
Like a social person.
Yeah.
And I know there's people who are
All right. Oh, I'm put on this man.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's get. Is this working? Yeah. Yes. You hear some thumping? No. I don't hear anything. Just that I have a loud voice. I don't think this works anymore. No, it's not. That means that the video recordings may not be working, and that's the only thing that stresses me out. Some of you may want to watch the videos. Which means I have to stand near here if I want to talk to you, which means I can't do my own Winfrey work the crowd kind of bracket. All right, so let me just. Okay. Any questions on the material so far? Yes, Lucy.
Yes. I had a question about a previous lecture, about for the upcoming midterm.
Yes.
And it was about the end of lecture 14.
14.
You know what? Maybe I'll just ask this at the end of class.
Yes, let's do that. Because I can barely remember lecture 19. Yes, other questions? Okay, so these past 3 weeks, 3 lectures, we've explored the rules governing how humans assemble themselves into social networks. And we've learned a little bit about what living in networks means for our lives, how it affects our behaviors, our emotions, our attitudes, and even our infections. And the last time we saw some examples of how this knowledge might be exploited to intervene in the world, in both online and offline worlds. Still, what's the point of a connected life? How does it help us as individuals and as a species? And it turns out that networks are a resource we can all use. Networks, in fact, are a kind of social capital. Now, most people, when they think about capital, think about money. But really, capital is any stock of resources that can be put to productive use. That's what capital is. And 2 further key ideas about capital are that in order to create capital, you have to invest skill and effort. And second, and more subtle, and in an idea that's been keeping me awake for 20 years, is that in order to create capital, you have to make changes in a substance that make it yield a higher rate of return than it otherwise would. That at its deepest level, the capital creation process is about the transmogrification of the natural world. Transforming one thing into another thing is what it means to create capital. For example, a farm is a stock of capital. By investing skill and effort and clearing the forest, you make the land more productive, capable of doing things it wasn't previously capable of doing, like growing fruits and vegetables and flowers and grains and so on. So improved land is a form of capital. Or here you take this tree. and you invest skill and effort, and you transform it into lumber. And the lumber is more valuable than the tree because you can do things with the lumber you couldn't do with the tree. Namely, invest still more skill and effort and transform the lumber into a violin. And the violin is more valuable than the lumber because you can do things with the violin you couldn't do with the lumber. Namely, make music. So each step of the way, you invest skill and effort, you transform one thing into another thing, and you make it a reservoir of wealth and a source of productive power. So capital is a change that allows a substance to act in new ways. And this is part of what makes it a store of wealth and a source of productive power. Or consider this example. You take this lump of iron ore and you invest skill and effort and transform it into a hammer. And the hammer is more valuable than the lump of iron because you can do things with the hammer you couldn't do with the lump of iron. Namely, invest still more skill and effort and transform it into a jet engine. And at each step of the way, you endow the thing with more capabilities and make it a source of power or of wealth. Now, a key innovation in thinking took place in the 1960s to see people and their skills and talents as a form of human capital. And the chief example of this is education. If we endow someone with skills and knowledge, we have changed them and they become more productive. We can change them in a way similar to the other types of capital we've been discussing, and they can earn a return on their investment made, yielding income just like the wood, for example. So you can take this former dissolute graduate student of mine on the far left, who's a drunkard, and you invest skill and effort, and clean him up, send him to Alcoholics Anonymous and so forth. And now he becomes more productive and capable of doing things he wasn't previously able to do. Then you can invest still more skill and effort and give him an education, right? And now he's even more productive. In principle, right now, I am investing skill and effort, and I am changing your minds, right? I am transforming your brains, rewiring your neurons, making you capable of doing something you weren't previously able to do. So at each step, we endow the entity, the phenomena, the substance, with new powers that it did not previously have. Now, ask yourself, are there other things that you could do to your bodies other than educate yourselves to make you more productive? What other kinds of things could you do? Yeah, Mary.
Learn a physical skill like dancing.
Perfect. So you could work on your bodies. You could get stronger, right? Or run faster. What else might you do? Lucy.
You could put on makeup.
Yes, that's exactly right. You could do other things to beautify your body. Very good. And people have been adorning themselves by the clothing they wear or by physically modifying their bodies for a very long time. Other ideas, Danielle?
We were just discussing this before, but you can caffeinate or, take some other...
I'm not going to encourage such abysmal behavior. As drinking caffeine. But yes, exactly. And in fact, you can get more fit, and it can also make you live longer, both of which make our productivity enhancing. And in fact, many have argued that health itself is a stock of human capital. Right? You can take better care of your health. You can go to the doctor, and the doctor can make changes in you that make you healthier and make you more productive and increase your human capital. We're picking up on, I think, what Lucy mentioned. What about this kind of change?
Tattoo.
Yes, it is a tattoo. Is it productive? Is this tattoo a consumption good or a capital improvement? Who knows the difference? Under what circumstances is the tattoo increasing your productivity? Yes?
Maybe you're a dancer, and that would be useful.
Yeah, maybe you're a dancer, so with the tattoo, I would give you more money to watch you dance with the tattoo than not. Otherwise, what is it? Yes, Sophia.
I was just going to say some cancer patients get them to measure
That's interesting. So that would be a productive. You would get a tattoo to measure the change in the size of your tumor. It's kind of a weird thing. Yes, Joseph, right?
Justin.
Justin, yeah.
Joseph's notice.
Okay.
To the extent that it makes you feel happier, and the happiness is something that improves your productivity, then sure.
Yes, very good. So the crucial distinction between a consumption good, well, actually, I'm not sure it has to increase your productivity. If it just makes you feel happier and makes you like you would buy an ice cream. Is buying an ice cream? Suppose if you're starving and you bought an ice cream, which give you value with calories. Yes, Justin.
Or maybe it's the self-expression aspect of it that allows you to feel more liberated or something like that.
And then would work to enhance your productivity. Okay, what about this tattoo? Who knows what this is? Anyone know what this is? It's very famous. Yes. What's your name? I forgot.
Nikki.
Nikki, yeah.
It's a Maori.
It's a Maori war tattoo, that's right. And why the Maori put this, why do the women can do it too, they have different customs about what tattoos they do. Why would the Maori warrior put this tattoo on?
I think it's like a symbol of their like free will or
It has a number of symbolic functions, but when you look at this tattoo, what effect does it have on you? It scares you, right? So this would be a capital investment, right? This would be a kind of human capital. This tattoo would frighten your enemies, okay? Would make you more productive and capable of doing things you weren't previously able to do. How about plastic surgery modifying one's body to be more productive, right? I mean, here are two pre and post plastic surgery stars that you may or may not recognize. It depends. I mean, if you just have some plastic surgery for your own satisfaction, that's a consumption good, but if it somehow makes you more productive, that's a human capital investment. Now, just like physical capital is created by a change in the material world, and human capital is a change in persons, social capital is a change in the relations among persons, a change that renders the group more productive and capable of doing things it was not previously able to do. And this is a very deep and very important idea, social capital. And it's best instantiated by the Coleman reading, which you absolutely should read. It's like a foundational reading that was in the syllabus. And in fact, social capital can arise in at least two senses from social structure. One is what's flowing within the group through these connections. For example, a group can have social capital because of the information that's flowing, or the germs that are flowing, or the altruism that's flowing, or the emotions are flowing, or because of how the groups, the constituent individuals, are connected. So contagion and connection in networks can endow the group with social capital. Now think about this idea. Think about if in the high schools that you guys went to, some of you went to certain high schools which, let's say, were smaller or bigger in the class. Some of you went to high schools that had a class size of 100, and some of you went to high schools that had a class size of 1,000. There are different kinds of high schools. And independent of that, some of you went to high schools where the norms were that you could leave your backpack in the hallway. Raise your hands if you went to a high school like that. And some of you went to high schools where that would be crazy. You would never leave your backpack in the hallway. Someone would steal it, and you would put it in your locker. Raise your hands if you went to that kind of high school. Okay, now in which of those two kinds of high schools do you think you were able to be more productive? The first kind. The latter kind, where you're worried about what your peers might do with your possessions, you're distracted. You're less able to be studious. You're less able to study. So that property of don't steal other people's stuff, is a social capital. It's a property of the groups. It's a group that is more altruistic and more cooperative and kinder. Okay, and that property is a property of a group, which is a kind of social capital, which allows the people within it to be more productive and capable of doing things it was not previously able to do. There's a norm that's flowing in there that we leave each other's stuff alone in our hallways. Okay, and people honor that norm, and that's a good thing. It makes the group more productive. Now, social capital has the following attributes, as reviewed in part in your reading. It adheres in aspects of social structure. Now, this is a very important thing because there are other classic definitions of social capital. For example, Robert Putnam's definition in Bowling Alone. And Putnam, I prefer the Coleman definition, which is why I gave you that assignment. The Putnam reading privileges institutions like, parent-teacher associations or churches or bowling leagues. And he says those institutions, and he's right, they are a kind of social capital, but that's too restrictive. I don't think we just institutions that are social capital. And there's the Bourdieu definition, which many sociologists love, which I think is a little bit rubbish. And I think actually the Bourdieu definition of social capital is more of what I would call cultural capital. It's like, do you know about opera? Well, I think that's a kind of human capital. That's not like what I think of as social capital. Social capital is a property of groups, that adheres in groups. It's not a property of individuals, okay? It's a property of groups. And it adheres in aspects of social structure. It's created by a change in the relations among people, transformation of a group from one structure to another, like the other examples we just reviewed of the trees and the farms and so on. It facilitates actions by the actors, makes them more productive and capable of doing things they weren't previously able to do. It's productive. It's not completely fungible. You can't convert it easily from one thing to another thing. It's scarce, like all capital. Capital is scarce, right? Wouldn't we all love to each have $1 billion? Well, we can't. We each have to have a lesser amount, if any. So capital is scarce. Social capital is a public good, and I'll come back to that. It's something we all can access. You can't prevent other people from accessing it. And it's not necessarily positive. The Nazis had a lot of social capital, okay? So it's very important to understand that capital in and of itself is not necessarily a good. You can put capital to good or evil uses, just like money, right? You can pay someone to murder someone else, or you can pay someone, to write a novel or something. Yes?
In the previous example about the backpack stealing,
Yeah.
would the unit of social capital, if maybe you can't even break it down into units in this sense, but
You say the school has social capital.
okay, so you wouldn't be able to say that the altruism of the group, that property, would be social capital?
Yes, you would.
Okay.
You would say that this is an altruistic school that abides norms about non-thieving norms.
Okay.
Yeah. But the individual, it's not a property of the individual. It's not like, yes, you yourself might have the human capital property of being a thief or not being a thief. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about it's a property of the collection of people. It's a norm that adheres in the group. So, okay. And social capital, to be clear, is not the same as social cohesion or collective efficacy or other terms you may have heard in other classes, although those things, social cohesion and collective efficacy, can be types or features of social capital. Now, as we saw a few lectures ago, different structures have different properties, and connections matter for the group and to the constituent individuals, and you will remember these examples now from 3 or 4 lectures ago. And the idea is that social capital is a property of collection of individual entities that emerges. And here we are again with this idea of emergence, which is something we've been discussing throughout the course from the very first lecture. It's a property that did not exist before the connections were made, and that could not necessarily have been foreseen by examination of the entities themselves. So think about these two objects. As you all learned in high school chemistry, they are allotropes of carbon. They are both made of carbon. And on the left, you have graphite, which is soft and dark. And on the right, you have diamond, which is hard and clear. And there are two key intellectual ideas here. First of all, these properties of softness and darkness and hardness and clearness do not inhere in the carbon atoms. They are properties of the collection of carbon atoms. And second, which properties you get depends on how you connect the carbon atoms to each other. Connect them one way, you get one set of properties. Take the same carbon atoms and connect them another way, and you get a completely different set of properties. And it's the same with human groups. We can take a group of people and connect them one way, and they have one set of properties, or as we saw in the last lecture yesterday, you can take a group of people and connect them another way, and you have a completely different set of properties. We saw several experiments yesterday that showed this. I can take you guys and connect you one way, and you're very nice to each other, and you spread information effectively, and you quit smoking together, or I take you guys and connect you another way, and you have none of those properties. That is a kind of social capital. It's a property of the groups that emerges because of the connections, because of the ties between the people, and not necessarily because of the people themselves. So it's the ties between people that make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. And our experience of the world depends on the actual structure of the ties around us, near and far. Now, this idea that social capital is a property of a collection of individual entities that emerges, that is a property that did not exist before the connections were made, and that could not necessarily have been foreseen by examining of the individual entities themselves, is an illustration, as I said, of emergence, which is seen in other phenomena in the natural world. For example, you can take this constituent, this combination of substances shown on the left, and you get this shown on the right. Life is an emergent property of matter. Consciousness is an emergent property of neurons. You can study neurons and not be able to understand that it's the pattern of connections of neurons that gives rise to consciousness, right? It emerges, just like the softness and darkness and hardness and clearness, just like life emerges from this example. Or with respect to emergence, think about this. This is a very primitive amoeboid fungus. It's a slime mold. It's a very ancient, primitive organism. And if I ask you, is this organism smart? What would you say? No, this is an amoeboid fungus, guys. It's a single-celled organism that grows on the forest floor. Yet individuals of these species can interconnect to form a superorganism with unexpected properties. And it turns out that these organisms can solve mazes. This is work done by Toshio Nakagaki, a Japanese mycologist, very classic work. So he took this maze and he put some oat flakes. So this fungus digests cellulose. It lives on the forest floor, and it eats like fallen leaves and trees and stuff. If you grew up in New England, did you ever pick up wet leaves at the end of the season and you saw those little white fibrils underneath? That's what this do. Those are little single organisms that fuse with nearby organisms, and they spread out on the forest floor, and they explore the forest floor looking for stuff to eat, and then they send the nutrients to the center, and then the waste, as they digest, they send to the periphery. So he took some oat flakes, which are cellulose, and he put them in the entrance and to the exit of the maze on this sort of agar gel, and here's what happens. So he plates out the fungus. The fungus starts bubbling up and expanding and growing and multiplying until it joins. Here are the oat flakes at the entrance and the exit. The whole plate of agar is covered with the fungus until all the paths die back except one path through the maze. The fungus was able to find the most efficient path through the maze. In fact, the fungus was better able to do this than Toshi's graduate students. When he gave complex mazes to his graduate students, they struggled to find the path through the maze, but the fungus was able to do it just fine. Okay? This is an emergent property of the fungus, right? Of the network, of the fungal network. And one of my favorite examples of this is my colleague Mark Fricker, who's a mycologist at Pembroke College in Oxford. He did this experiment where he took this map of England, and on the left is the railroad network in England, designed by human railroad engineers over 200 years. And on the right is he put an oat flake in every city, and he let the fungus solve the optimal strategy. And then he showed this solution by the fungus to the railroad engineers. They said, oh my God, this is brilliant. How did we not think to put this trunk line here? It's load balancing, it's fault tolerant. You know, if this rail line breaks down, why didn't we think it would reroute the traffic this other way? The fungus had the optimal solution to the challenge of how to connect these flakes together. In fact, this was so impressive that Mark, who's a mycologist, he studies fungi, that's what he does for a living, was appointed by the Queen to Her Majesty's Commission on the Rails. And so he winds up on the National Railroad Commission, helping to design the British Railway system. And here's a related example. These are, maybe you might have seen these, often these videos go viral. These are the starlings of Otmoor, England. Let me just show this to you here. Incredible. Wow! So these are called murmurations that these organisms do this, these birds do this. And the question is, how does this behavior occur? Is anyone organizing it? You know, there's no head starling giving orders. Okay, we're all going to fly to the left, or we're all going to, fly to the right. So I'd like to do an experiment with you now. And here's the experiment. Could you all just please try to clap in unison? Don't look at me, just clap in unison. Go ahead. Okay, very good. How do you do that? Did I set up a metronome? Did I try? You actually looked to me for leadership. Like slavish Yale undergraduates. What should we do? What does the professor wants to do? How did you do that? There was no organizer. There was no government, no police force, right? No leader. You were able to organize yourselves to do this. And it turns out that actually this kind of so there are a number of ways that this could happen. One is a kind of cultural norm regarding clapping frequency. You know, maybe you all came from Spain and there's a very traditional flamenco rhythm which you all expected and you'd all been trained with. It's magnificent. You guys ever seen flamenco? It's incredible. God, I love it. And there's a very famous woman from 100 years ago who's dead now, who's the most, I'm blocking her name, but I would recognize her dancing. You can't even imagine how good she is. But anyway, so you might have had like a preformed norm regarding the way you, and that's why you could all do it, because you all just, it's like in Japan, if you ask kids to draw a cat, they all draw the same cat because they've been taught how to draw this cat, okay? That's one possibility. Another possibility is a kind of global synchrony. In this kind of size, a group this size, it would have been pretty easy for you to all kind of listen to the whole group. Like I saw you waiting. I forgot your name. What's your name? Max. So Max sort of was watching the group and then, then sort of joined in when the rhythm was being formed, a kind of global synchrony. Or you could have a local synchrony, which is you just listen to those immediately around you. In fact, I've done this sort of clap in unison exercise in a room with 400 people, and you're able to clap in unison. Each of you making small adjustments, just listening to your immediate neighbors, coming into synchrony, and then eventually the whole group can synchronize based on obeying local rules alone. And it turns out that this complex group behavior, like the murmurations, like the fungus solving the mazes, like you guys clapping in unison, can arise from individuals doing very simple things or following very simple rules. So take our birds, for example. This is a famous solution to this problem called BOIDS, it's an artificial life program developed by Craig Reynolds in 1986, 40 years ago now, which simulates flocking behavior of birds. So you imagine a collection of computer agents, the BOIDS, that obey three simple rules. And the rules are that you have a zone of attraction. And the zone of attraction is remain close to your neighbors. So you're not going to flee from your neighbors that are from a certain distance. And the second rule is move in the same direction as your neighbor. Okay, so if your neighbor is flying straight, you fly straight. If your neighbor turns, you turn, which is this zone of alignment. So you have a zone of attraction, a zone of alignment, and then right in the middle, you have a zone of repulsion. Avoid collisions with your neighbors. So you just have those rules. You just give the boys only these rules, and you make a large group of boys, and then here's what a flock of these computerized boys look like, and we're now going to add a couple of falcons that are predating these birds, that are going to swoop in and attack these birds. And you see how the birds are moving in a kind of synchrony, right? Just like the real birds we saw before. These are not real birds, guys. You understand this, right? These are like artificial agents that are being predated by these two hawks. And they're just moving, following those three simple rules. They have this emergent behavior. You understand what I'm saying? They're acting in unison. There's a kind of flocking phenomenon, right? A kind of herd phenomenon, which you should be anticipating is also what human beings do, right? Humans act in herding ways. All of you guys, for example, when you buy fashions, right? When fashions change, and who is that singer again? Taylor Swift. Thank you, Taylor Swift. I'm not a Swiftie. I should be at this point. But anyway, Taylor Swift or patterns of fabric or hemlines. Famously, it's an old-fashioned example. From down low above the knee, they go up and down, or the width of ties, and so on. Now, the question is, why might the animals collaborate in the first place? So maybe it's to avoid predation, like we saw, like this flocking behavior. When the falcons come zooming in, it's a way for the birds to communicate something to each other. There's the falcon, there's the predator. Let's avoid it. So they collaborate because there's value in it. There are all kinds of theories about flocking, but here's one idea, which I'm about to show you, which is that two or many heads may be better than one. Okay, now, this is amazing, this example, and this is work done by Ian Cousin, who's a brilliant guy. This is now classic work. So imagine you're part of a large flock of birds on the coast of California, 100,000 birds. And you have to fly 10,000 miles or 5,000 miles over the Pacific to reach your nesting grounds over the open ocean. So the whole flock's about to get up, and it's going to fly. And the proper direction for you to fly is to fly south-southwest. That's the direction you should fly. But every bird has a slightly different opinion about which direction to fly. So you want to fly south-south-southwest, and you want to fly southwest-southwest. So each of you has a slightly different opinion about which direction to fly in, 5,000 miles over the open ocean. And if you don't get to the island, what happens to the flock? You die. Right? You've flown weeks over the open ocean, 5,000 miles, and you miss the island. So you all want to get to the island so you can all mate there and have new baby Yaleys, okay, new baby birds. All right? So you're flying out over the ocean, and you each have a slightly different opinion of where to go. What should you do in that situation? Do you know? This came up when we were talking about prognosis. Remember we were talking about prognosis 5 or 10 lectures ago? Yeah, what should you do? Average, yeah, signal to noise theory. So each of you will have a slightly different opinion about where to go, but on average, your collective opinion should be the correct opinion, right? We don't want, if all of us said we should go where he says, where JU says, we're like, well, maybe he's a little wrong, and we all fly where he tells us, and we're hundreds of miles off course by the time we fly 7,000 miles. That would be a bad idea. And then Justin says, now Joseph is coming in, so you guys are really confusing me. It's like the Sophia-Lucy confusion. Except there are two Sophias and one Lucy, I've now learned. Anyway, so Justin says we should fly in this direction, we follow him. That's a bad mistake, too. So instead we just average what everyone's opinions are, and this leads us to the right island. Is everyone with me still? Do you have the intuition about what signal-to-noise theory is? This is the second time you've heard about it in this course, and why we want to do that. Okay. Now, however, suppose that instead of everyone having small differences of opinion, this half wants to fly due west, and this half wants to fly due south. So you guys know, this half wants to fly southwest, and that's where the island is, the destination, and this half wants to fly west. Okay? What happens if we average the opinions? We never make it. That's exactly right. So when the differences of opinions are small, so what should we do in that case? So half of you want to fly southwest, half of you want to fly due west. If we average our opinions, we all die. So what should we do instead? We all have to go together. That's a good idea. We could each go in different directions, half and half. If you can't do that, we all fly. So what should we do instead? It's not a trick question. Yeah, Lucy. We could vote. That's right. Or, yeah. We could vote, and that is going to be the answer. But in the initial simple case, yes? I forgot your name. Natalie, yeah? Could you speak up?
Could you not?
No, you can't go to both.
Oh, okay.
You have to pick one. Yeah, Justin.
Compromise? Like one group compromises and just follows.
Yes, exactly. You should flip a coin and go in one of the two. And that's better. Why is that better? Previously, you had a 0% chance of survival. Now, with flipping a coin or voting, as I'll come to in a moment, you have a 50% chance of survival. You've infinitely increased your chance of survival by voting. By picking one. So averaging the opinion is not the right strategy. And what Ian Cousin showed was exactly that. This is with real birds, that when their differences of opinion are small, the birds average where they're going to go. But when their difference of opinion get to a certain point, they switch from the averaging regime to the winner-take-all regime. They vote. And they go where the modal response is, where at least half the birds wish to go. It's unbelievable. The birds switch regimes for combining the information depending on whether their differences of opinion are small or large. And if they're small, they average, and if they're large, they switch to the winner-take-all, and they go where the most of the birds want to go, because that's a better outcome collectively than otherwise. It's really just incredible. So once again, the issues of social capital and emergence take us back to the question of how we explain social phenomena. So, and this is bound to be not necessarily the midterm, but if you can imagine, I'm a professor, and this is like the third time you're seeing this. It's like a key idea, okay, a very basic, important idea. It's methodological individualism and methodological holism. Do we explain social phenomena by reference to the characteristics or actions of individuals, or do we say no, the social entities cannot be understood simply by doing that? We also have to understand them as a collectivity. The social capital is complicated because certain aspects are, in fact, byproducts of individual actions. So social capital sometimes is created incidentally because of individual actions, but social capital does not inhere in individuals. It's not a property of individuals. It might be created as a byproduct of individual actions, but it's not a property of individuals. So what are some illustrative types of social capital? We've seen how topologies, network topologies, can contain social capital, right? You've seen multiple examples of that. We've alluded to this notion of trustworthiness can be a kind of social capital that's very effective. Or information channels. These are all in Coleman's article. Or norms, or what Coleman calls appropriable social organizations. So groups can differ in their trustworthiness within them, which allows concerted action at lower cost. For example, the diamond market example that Coleman gives, or the famous example of the McGreevy traders, who are better able to trade diamonds at lower prices because together they can enforce their contractual obligations without the necessity of complicated recourse to courts and police and contracts and so on. We trust each other, so we don't need the expense of police and courts. Since all of us saves us money, so we can outcompete the other group, which doesn't have trust, and in order to enforce contracts in that group, they need police and courts, which we don't need, so our group does better than that group. Information channels are an aspect of social structure that is productive, or that reflect the actual structure of the social network itself. Consider hospitals with efficient flows of innovative and useful ideas versus hospitals that lack such flow of innovative and useful ideas. Or sports teams with established ways of communicating non-verbally versus those without. Or sports teams with particular social network architectures that are better able to play effectively. So it's not just the players, the human capital, the ability of each player, it's the ability of the groups of players to work together that makes this a winning team. And norms might include attitudes towards justice or altruism or selflessness that people can count on and that are valuable. Appropriable organizations that Coleman talks about are extant structures that can be used for new purposes, such as a club that's formed for one purpose that can serve another purpose. Now, in the olden days, I don't know still, there must be examples like this on Yale campus, and I'm going to use an old-fashioned example, and if there are newer ones, please tell me. But in the olden days, for example, you might be a part of a choral group or a glee club or one of the, I forgot what they're called, those singing groups you have on campus, a cappella groups, one of those a cappella groups, and you join the a cappella group in order to sing. But actually, you need a ride to Washington, D.C. next weekend. And so you ask the members of your a cappella group, is anyone driving to D.C.? So you appropriate one group, which was created for one purpose, and can use it for a completely different purpose. This group is productive and capable of doing things it wasn't previously able to do. It was previously hard for you to find a ride to Washington, D.C., but now, because you're a member of this group, you can tap into that social capital and produce a ride for yourself. Do you understand? Or a church group. You know, church groups are often used, or African-American barbershops is a very famous example. If you don't know this example, you can look up the readings about this. The barbershop was not built to take care of patients with diabetes, but many smart people have said, oh my God, there's a lot of conversation happening in these barbershops where people are coming to get their hair cut. This is where we can go and deliver anti-diabetic information, so we appropriate this group to serve another purpose. Or church groups appropriated for health promotion or community cleanup activities and so on. All of these here are linked to social structures. Now, there are a number of provisional ways of measuring social capital. Like, okay, so now we said, okay, there is a thing in social capital. How can we measure it? It's actually very hard to measure social capital. We can measure interpersonal trust. We can go into the community and ask people how much do they trust each other. We can look at income inequality. We might make the argument that more income equality is associated with more social capital. So maybe we look at income inequality. Or we might map the network structures, the topologies, for example, we might map. And it's worth noting that social capital can be put to bad ends, just like some types of material capital, like guns, right? You can put guns to a good end or a bad end. Or human capital, like bomb-making knowledge. You can use your bomb-making knowledge for good or for evil. And note, furthermore, that bad health habits could be enforced by local norms, right? So it's not just good health habits that social capital might enforce, but bad ones. You might be in a community that says you need to, anorexia is a good thing. Or remember, we learned about those culture-bound syndromes. You remember the vanishing penis and the spirit loss and all those examples from early in the course. Those could be norms that are enforced within the community that aren't necessarily salubrious. Or adolescent smoking. Some of you may have started vaping early in high school because your friends were vaping. That's not a good function. So social capital can have negative effects. It can result in pressure to conform. It can lead to the exclusion of outsiders from resources controlled by network members, right? Social capital can become exclusive. Well, this is ours. You can't have it. That would be a negative effect. Or it can lead to excessive claims placed by members by free riding. Right? So in other words, one of the negative effects of social capital now is the Garrett Hardin example. That was a classic paper that's very deep and important, and that was assigned for today, which I'll talk about in a moment, the tragedy of the commons. Or it can lead to a downward leveling of norms. Okay, so because of social pressure, we can have a race to the bottom instead of a race to the top in this situation. And pertinently, differently situated individuals may be differentially able to tap social capital or access it. Now, one of the properties we mentioned earlier about social capital is that it's a public good. Have anyone heard this expression before, or studied it, or understand its strict meaning? A few of you. A public good is one in which there's no exclusivity in consumption, which is known as non-excludability. So, for example, think of a lighthouse, okay? We all get together and we build a lighthouse, but I can't exclude you from using the light of the lighthouse for your own purposes, okay? If I have a piece of cake, I say it's my cake, you can't have it. If I have a lighthouse and it's blasting light off to prevent shipwrecks, I can't prevent you from using that light, just like I can prevent you. And that's called the non-excludability. It's a kind of capital. The lighthouse is a kind of capital, just like a piece of cake is a kind of capital, or a car is a kind of capital. I can prevent you from using my car, but I can't prevent you from using my lighthouse, which is blasting light out. Or fireworks. I can blast fireworks into the air for my own enjoyment, but you enjoy them too. I can't prevent you from enjoying my fireworks. Or the air. Air is a public good. I can breathe the air. I can't prevent you from breathing the air. I can kill you, but I can prevent you from breathing the air. Or the national defense, right? Many of us contribute to the national defense, serving in the military, paying taxes to support the national defense. But you neither want to serve nor pay any taxes, and you still benefit from the national defense. It's a public good. I can't exclude you from benefiting from a public good. And because of this, social capital, because it's a public good, social capital almost always arises as a byproduct of social relationships established for some other reason or for some other activity or purpose. And as such, there's underinvestment or neglect of such resources, which is a serious problem. And this type of problem is known as the tragedy of the commons. So some key features of social capital being a public good is that it has non-exclusive use. Because it's a public good, you can't exclude others from using it. It arises as a byproduct. Typically, you don't set out to make social capital. It just arises. Because of this, people tend not to invest. It's hard to get people to build a lighthouse, right? I would have to tax you or force you or browbeat you, or we'd have to come together and get organized. Let's build a lighthouse. Let's build a library. Let's do something. and it's difficult to create. Capital is always difficult to create. And has this tragedy of the commons property, which I'll come back to in a moment. So the question is why? Why do we underinvest in public goods like clean air, or lighthouses, or public displays, or the national defense, or infrastructure of various kinds? Why do we underinvest? And sometimes this can arise from a class of phenomena known as social traps. And a classic example has to do with Route 28, that used to be a 2-lane highway extending the entire length of Cape Cod that could get absurdly crowded with traffic on the weekends. Now, have any of you ever had this experience of driving to Cape Cod on the weekend? Some of you maybe came from New England. It's a complete pain in the ass. You cross the bridge here. It's better now because they've expanded the highway. But in the olden days, this was the highway to Cape Cod. Okay, it was a divided highway, 2 lanes going this way, 2 lanes that way, and it would be bumper to bumper for hours. A trip that might take an hour might not take 3 or 4 hours, and it was a real problem. And here's one man going away for the weekend to Provincetown. So he's going to drive along Route 28 in Provincetown, and he's stacked the mattresses on his highway. Here's his Massachusetts plates. He's heading to where he's going, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of trouble for him that lies ahead, and even more for all of his fellow travelers. And this is a social trap known as the mattress on Route 28. Because his mattress, poorly secured, flies off his car, and here's his mattress blocking the lane of traffic. And the question is, why does nobody move the mattress? Why does the mattress stay there all day and block traffic the whole day? Why does nobody move the mattress? So why does nobody move the mattress? Who knows? Yes, Danielle.
Because everybody thinks that somebody else will do it.
Okay, that's the first reason. Everyone thinks somebody else will do it. What other reasons are there? Yes, Kara? Emily.
It's less of a pain to sit in your car for an extra amount of time than get out and
Okay, but is it really? I mean, do you really want to sit in your car for 4 hours and get out and move the mattress? You're in the car for hours. Is that what's stopping you? You'd rather sit in your car? Let me ask you this, Emily. Would you rather sit in the car for 4 hours or get out of the car and move the mattress?
Well, if I'm waiting for 4 hours, I'm probably way back
Very
there
good.
and I don't realize that the mattress is there.
That's right. So the reason the mattress isn't known is that people in Zone 1, they have a lot to gain from removing the mattress, but what stops them from moving the mattress is their ignorance. They don't know the source of the problem. Okay? So the people in Zone 1 don't know the problem. They have the most to gain. They're going to wait 4 hours now in the car. One of them could get out and walk ahead and move the mattress, which would be the smart move, even from their own perspective. Forget all the benefits to everyone else, but they don't have the requisite knowledge to solve the problem. Okay, very good. What about other people in this dilemma? Why aren't they acting? Yes, Danielle.
Once you're in zone 3, like once you're close to the mattress,
Yeah.
you're already there. And
Correct.
so
Now the Emily thing applies. You're like, first of all, you're like, to hell with them. I've waited 4 hours. Why should I now stop having waited 4 hours? I have 30 more seconds. So these people who have the requisite knowledge to solve the problem lack the requisite incentive, right? Because now, yes, they have to get out of their car and spend a few minutes and get dirty and haul the mattress, or they could just drive 5 more seconds and drive past the mattress, right? What about these people at Zone 4? They're past. They don't give a shit. Excuse my language. They don't care about anything that's finally beyond the mattress. And in fact, this is what happens with so many social traps, with so many problems. There are lots of free riders, people who just tag along in vaccination, or the tragedy of the commons, or in the prisoner's dilemma. And in a famous essay in your readings, Garrett Hardin introduces a hypothetical example of a pasture shared by local herders. And the herders are assumed to wish to maximize their yield, and so will increase their herd size whenever possible. And the utility of each additional animal has both a positive and negative effect. The positive effect is that the herder receives all of the proceeds from each additional animal. The negative effect is that the pasture is slightly degraded by each additional animal. But the problem is, for the individual herder weighing up these utilities, the rational course of action is to add an extra animal, because he gets all the benefit, but the cost is divided amongst everyone else. But of course, everyone else makes the same rational calculation, right? Every one of you is thinking, well, I'll just raise another animal on the collective herd. If it was your own land, if you owned the pasture, the benefit of having another animal, you'd subtract the cost of degrading your land. But now, if it's common land, if it's a public good, it's hard to maintain the public good because you don't care so much about it. You derive the benefit of the lighthouse without having paid. You derive the benefit of this extra animal, but only pay a small fraction of the price because the degradation and the grass that your cow eats is divided amongst the cost of everyone else that's sharing this commons. So overgrazing, the overgrazing cost here is an example of what is known as an externality, a phenomenon that applies to people outside of a transaction. And because this sequence of events follows predictably from the behavior of individuals concerned, Hardin describes it as a tragedy in the sense of the remorseless working of things. And as such, it illustrates how invisible hand, laissez-faire approaches to resource problems need not always provide the expected optimal solution. In other words, what Hardin is concerned about is with market failures. Each person acting in the furtherance of their own interests results in catastrophe. Right? The commons is degraded. All the cows eventually die, and all the people, because everyone is selfishly maximizing their own benefit, neglecting the benefit, rationally neglecting the benefit to others, resulting in this social trap, like the mattress example that I gave, and you have this problem. So I'm going to give you another example now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to auction off this dollar. Have any of you ever played the auction a dollar game before? Has anyone heard this example before? Okay, so you don't get to play. Anyone else? Okay. So one of you is going to get this dollar. I'm going to auction off this dollar. But because I'm sure to lose this dollar, I'm going to impose two rules. First of all, to avoid spending a lot of time, you're going to bid in 5-cent increments. Okay, so 5, 10, and so on. You're going to bid in 5-cent increments. And furthermore, no one of you can get up and organize the auction. You're each going to act on your own. And because I expect to lose the auction, I'm going to get both the highest bidder is going to give me their money, and the second highest bidder is also going to give me their money. Everyone understand the two rules? There are two rules. 5-cent bids, and at the end of the auction, the highest bidder is going to pay me, and the second highest bidder is going to pay me. Do you understand the rules? Okay, here we go. I'm auctioning this dollar. Who bids $1? Who bid? No, you got to go 5-cent increments. You got to start at 5-cent increments. Okay, yes.
So you'll just switch.
I'm going to give whoever wins this auction is going to get this dollar signed by me. Okay? Can I restate the rules? Okay, good. Thank you, Sophia. Here are the rules. They're Yale students. There are two rules. Joseph. They're 5-cent increments starting at 5 cents.
Oh, starting at 5 cents. My bad.
Yes, 5 cents. Like I said, 5, 10. Remember that part of the briefing? Yeah, okay. 5, 10. You're starting at 5 cents. 5-cent increments, so you're not going to go 5, 6, 7. You're going to go 5, 10.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it? All right, good. What's the first bid to be? 5 cents. 5 cents. And the second and only rule is that I'm going to collect the bid from the highest bidder and the second highest bidder. Yes, Liz?
Do we have to have the nickels on us?
No, you can pay me for the nickels later. Very good question. I trust you to give me the bidders to pay. Okay? Yeah?
If you're going to give to two people, they're both going to...
We're just going to now play the game. Here we go. Only one of you is going to get this dollar. Okay? Who bids 5 cents for this dollar? Raise your hands. I got 5. Okay. Down. Who bids 10? 10. Okay. Keep betting. Speak up. What do you bid? 15. Okay. Here. 20. 25.
30.
30.
35.
35.
40.
Who bid 40? 40. 45. 50. Okay. 50. 55.
Oh,
60.
65.
65. Hold on. Slow down. What's happened here now?
We're bidding.
You're bidding 65 and he's bid 60. What's going to happen to me?
You're going to make money.
How much money am I going to make so far? 25 cents. So you're going to pay me... Oh, I already told you the rules. Hold on. So you just bid me 65 and you bid me 60. Okay? And you're going to get the dollar for 65.
But you're collecting two.
I'm collecting this. I'm going to collect from the number 1 and the number 2.
You're going to sell with 45.
Okay, hold on. And what was your name again? I keep forgetting.
Max.
Max with the glasses. Yeah, what do you want to bid me? You want to bid?
It's 70.
70. He bid 70. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good, actually.
75.
75. Okay.
80.
80.
85.
85.
90.
90?
95.
95?
Dollar?
$1. You bid me $1 for the dollar. Very wise.
$1.05.
$1.05. $1.10. $1.15. Okay, hold on.
Good.
Okay, so we got someone bid me $1 for $1. Seems crazy at the beginning. You might not have thought of it. And then what happened? There's a little bit of silence. And then what happened? But hold on. Then what happened? Someone bid me $1.05 for $1, which seems absurd, doesn't
It was
it?
the same person who bid 95 cents.
He was the same person who bid 95 cents. That's right. But some of you got in there on the action. Nikki wanted some of the action. I don't know why. But yes, Liz.
I would argue that you offered to sign it, right?
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie.
Usually, I screw up. Thank you. That's completely right. You're completely right. I should have offered to sign it. Usually, I don't reveal that till the end. So now I'm going to give, what I'm now going to reveal is that actually, because you've been such good sports, I'm going to give you both $1, both you and you, signed by me. Who bid, I'm sorry, you two who bid. One of you bid $1, one of you bid $1.05, so you're both going to get it. But the point of this exercise is a very famous example, the dollar auction, that was invented at Yale by Martin Shubik to illustrate the paradox brought about by traditional rational choice theory, in which players with perfect information in a game are compelled to make ultimately irrational decisions based completely on a sequence of rational choices made throughout the game. So each of you made a rational choice. Every bid was rational. Do you understand that? Every single bid was rational. But in the end, you made an irrational outcome arose. Do you understand what happened here? Yes. Even though you knew the rules from the beginning, you were led inexorably to a tragedy of the commons. Yes.
With the same thing.
I saw some eyes widen and some jaws drop, which as a professor is what I live for. I learned something. Are you learning? Yes. Okay, yes.
Would the same thing happen if you weren't in a classroom setting, if you didn't know the other person in the auction that you were up against?
Yeah, the thing can happen. And there was a very famous exploitation of this idea when you guys were in elementary school. Someone would say, "I'm gonna auction a laptop for any price, but I'm gonna collect all the money that's bid from anybody." So all these people said, "I'll bid a penny for the laptop," and then 1,000 people saw a penny bid, and then someone said, "Well, I'll bid 2 pennies," and then 1,000 people saw 2 pennies, and it just got up, and then people were selling laptops for tens of thousands of dollars. They were collecting from everyone just by selling, and they would give away the laptop, but they would still come out ahead. A variation of what I just told you. So it's because of such social traps. I'm sorry, any more questions on this? I'm going to sign these now, make sure I give them to you later. So, So, any more questions about that so far, where we are? We're changing ahead of schedule. You guys have been very good today. So, and it's because of such social yes, Mary?
I'm just a little skeptical. So in the real world, when they did this, people continued bidding past $1.
Yeah, so you just bid past $1. Even if I hadn't told you about the signature thing, which Liz rightly called me out on,
Yeah.
you would have. I've been doing this for 20 years. People always bid.
Just so they can win.
No, because they initially think I can get $1 for 5 cents. Why did you bid? You bid.
Yeah, but I'm saying when you pass $1, then it's like you're paying to get $1.
But you're gonna
You
lose
get to $1,
out.
but the guy that bid 95 cents, he's going to give me 95 cents and get nothing.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there, Max is sitting there and thinking, I bid 95 cents.
So then it's cheaper.
Pay $1.05, he gets back $1, he only loses 5 cents versus 95 cents.
I see. Okay.
Yeah?
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
Everyone's making rational decisions. You get a sequence of rational decisions made by every individual, and you get an irrational outcome. Guys, this happens all the time in social life. We have all kinds of craziness in our society that arises despite the fact that everyone is seemingly acting rationally. Okay? Like pollution, for example, which is a tragedy of the commons, which Garrett Hardin is concerned about. Everyone is rationally deciding to graze their cattle on the commons, and the result is we despoil our environment. Right? Yeah, Sophia? No?
No, I guess I was going to ask, like, then how does altruism fit into this social context?
Well,
The assumption is that, like, everyone's working on about
Selfishness.
theory or like national theory, but that's not always the case.
Correct. Correct. And so many of us act altruistically, we pay sacrifices, and all of you have these impulses, and all of you do this. You give money to poor people, you volunteer on weekends, you help tutor your roommates in for just being a nice person on subjects they have difficulty with. There are all kinds of nice altruistic acts that you all engage in, and that we evolve to do, and that are the subject of this book I keep referring to, which is not part of this class blueprint, that covers this whole topic at length. Yes. So, but the dollar auction is not, it wasn't Max's altruism that resulted in him offering me $1.05 for the dollar. I was going to make money no matter what. He was just selfish. That's why he was paying me $1.05 for my dollar. So, and it's because of social traps as well as for other reasons that, in fact, we have formal institutions, right? It's because of market failures, because of social traps, because of collective action problems, because of tragedy of the commons, that we have governments, we have voluntary groups, we have police. We come together to say we're going to tax you, otherwise nobody will build a lighthouse or nobody will build a fire station. But we're going to work together to do it, to overcome our natural resistance. And these are all examples of how groups might, in fact, otherwise underinvest in public goods, or how they come to do foolish things as a group that make sense as individuals. So one of the overarching points here is that there are lots of things that are bad for groups that are sensible for individuals. The group, guys, is a different thing than the individuals. And it's not the sum total of what works for individuals. Right? Markets are more than people buying and selling good. Riots are more than people expressing anger. Elections are more than people just voting. They have an existence, these collective phenomena, riots, markets, elections, commons, lighthouses, social capital. They have an existence that transcends the individuals within them and that transcends the actions of the individuals within them. And in short, social capital, a public good, is valuable, and it is worth the investment, and it yields a very high return in terms of socially valued goods such as public safety, education, and health. And here are some ways we might think about deliberately creating social capital at different locations or levels in our society. In youth and schools, we might think about improving civics education or community service programs. We have a serious problem in our society right now that goes back to the Jefferson, when I cited Thomas Jefferson about the importance of a public education early in the course. We have made underinvestments in civic education. Many people in the United States today don't understand how the judiciary works, don't understand the peaceful transfer of power, are prone to conspiracy theories on the right and on the left, crazy conspiracy theories. And a lot of it is a lack of public education, a lack of commitment to the commonweal, a lack of shared understanding of what it means to live in a plural democracy, where you have to tolerate the views of people you disagree with sometimes. Maybe they're not even bad people, you just disagree with them. But they have to obey certain norms. Or workplaces, so incentives for firms that promote volunteerism or social connection, or urban design. There are different ways we can design our cities that might be better or worse for us in terms of social cohesion and social capital. Or in our politics and government, where we might want to assess the social capital, or have policies that strengthen caregiving, or strengthen the extent to which people care about their neighbors. And here's another take on this idea, which almost brings me to tears every time I read it. This is a very famous address by Robert F. Kennedy, not the President John F. Kennedy, but his brother, who also served as Attorney General. He made at the University of Kansas, March the 18th in 1968. This is Robert F. Kennedy's famous speech. He says, "500,000 American children suffer from serious malnutrition, and I have seen some of them. I have seen personally some of them starving in the state of Mississippi, their stomachs bloated, their bones and their bodies scarred, many of them retarded for life. Up to 80% of some Indian tribes are unemployed, And the suicide rate among the high school children is shockingly high, dozens of times the national average. For the Black American of the urban ghetto, we really do not know what its unemployment rate is, because from 1/5 to 1/3 of these adult men in these areas have literally dropped out from sight, uncounted and unknown by all the agencies of government. Drifting about the cities, without hope, without family, and without a future. By these standards, we are not so rich a country. Truly, we have a gross national product almost $800 billion. But can that be the criterion by which we judge this country? Is it enough? And then he goes on. For the gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and jails for the people who break them. It counts Whitman's rifle and Speck's knife and television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. And the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, the joy in their play. It is indifferent to the decency of our factories and the safety of our streets alike. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, which is really lacking now, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither wit nor courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our duty to our country. It measures everything, in short, except what makes life worthwhile, and it can tell us everything about America except why we are proud to be Americans. This is social capital. This is what we need in our society, kind of an emergent property of commitment to the common weal and the public good, which is sorely lacking, and which, whether you realize it or not, we're at a bit of a low right now in our society, and it needs repair and attention, and it affects all of us as individuals and as a nation. That's it for today. Any questions before I let you go? Yes?
Is the solution then to commodify things? I remember last lecture, or this was in another class, but they were like, no, we can
Don't
take
confuse me with other professors. I'm unique.
like
We're not all alike. Not all your professors are the same. Please, go on.
So true. But they were talking about, like, you know, you can try and quantify the value of, like, a public health intervention. Can we commodify or quantify the value of, like, compassion?
Yeah, that's what like carbon credits are like, and like carbon taxes like. And I didn't really talk about this today, but if you put a price on some of these negative and positive things that can be done, then you can create a market for them, and then you can avoid some of these tragedies. That's exactly right. Or the problem is that you're indifferent. If you have to pay to graze your cattle on public land, then you don't degrade it as much.
Right.
I was going to ask about like tolls on roads and things
Yes.
like that. Does that detract from being a public good, or is it still count?
That's a little different than tolls on roads because you're getting a benefit from using the road. You're paying. Okay, so I won't see you next Wednesday when there's the exam that Dorothy will proctor, but I will see you on Thursday talking about neighborhood effects. Okay, the two people who get the dollars come to me. And are you learning?
Yeah.
Yes, good. I forgot who got the dollar. You are one of them? No, you don't have to pay me. No, you get the dollar just because you are a good sport.
Yes.
No, you don't have to pay me. You got the, you're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. Yes. So.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Very, very good.
Yes, and they're trying to give it to us. Like, why would you contribute to social structure? Now, so it rises to when you act well in your mind, you can give rise to
I mean, it's not easy.
But you can also just email me and I'll make it for you.
主要吧，是因为
And Danielle and
我们俩都编这个东西，但是其实
with Emily.
就是音频上是不一样的，相当于你这个 project 其实是看这个 displacement 的
就是我直觉是这样，因为我的水果是这样吃白的，
对，是真的是偏有。
然后我的 outcome just for
Yeah, but actually, I think not only IP vendors or research providers. So if you just directly use the linear regression, you cannot do all the confounders. So yeah, so we want to use this kind of research provider to somehow like
I treat you in a way that is optimal for you, but as a result, I inadvertently create drug-resistant pathogens, which then spread to her. And so therefore, that's like a tragedy of the commons. Each person acting selfishly to get the optimal treatment for themselves contributes to the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria that harm others. I thought that's what you were going to say. But you described instead a kind of example of getting second opinions, which I'm not sure of the connection between them.
实际上就是只不过我没有碰过，但是我不觉得这有，就是说，
So kind of narrow-sightedness leads to a
因
suboptimal
为它
meds.
应该是一个结论。
So each specialty acting like, I think the kidney is the most important organ because I'm a nephrologist, and I think the lung is the most important organ because I'm a pulmonologist. They get these narrow visions, so then the patient is like overgrazed pasture and things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of.
That's an interesting idea. I'm not sure I would stretch it that way, but I can see the
DI
point
只
you're
是
making.
当你 control for covariance 的时
So
候，
I missed lecture
它
14,
只
so
是
I was
提
just
升
watching it in
对
the library, and at the end, like
它本
right
来也
at
是
the
很
5 minutes
biased，
that you had
given
finished
the
talking, you
assumptions。
had just mentioned the
就是
income hypothesis. So it was just, if you don't know the definition of that off the top of your head.
等一下，所以你说的什么
I think it's
就是这个，
in the slides.
比如
I
说
think one
这
of the
个是
readings.
print，
Yeah, this is the absolute
然
income
后这是
hypothesis. You can
post。
find it in the citation there.
Okay, so that it's
Wow.
not it's not this,
It's
the
that-
hypothesis
实
that
际
it's
上我
not
甚至
just,
不知道原本的 trend 是
I'm sorry,
它
it is the
它
hypothesis that
或者
some of it
就
is
是各
just
各
due
个
to
地
the
方可能有
concavity
各
of
种
the
奇
curve.
怪
okay.
，that it's just a mathematical
let's
artifact.
say
It turns
there's a
out
trend.
that this is the relationship
然后
with
现在
black
看
lines
数
that
字
would have been
发生
observed,
后
slightly
有
downsloping
人进入
between
这个
mortality rate and income
然后
inequality
它
that arises just from
瞬间变成了
the concatenated
这样。
curve.
Okay,
But in fact, we see this much. So,
Okay.
so
Just
the
counterfact.
concatenated curve can explain part of the relationship, but not all of the relationship.
Okay.
Is the point?
okay, great.
Wait,
Thank
Lucy,
you.
if you like want to exchange numbers, I can also send numbers.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I missed 2 of the lectures this
This
so
session.
good. Wait, we could
session. Great, but
All right, guys. See you later.
Thank you so much, Professor.
You're welcome.
I love your backpack.
We're still fighting over my
You're pretty different diff. Good luck. All right, guys. See you later.
所以你们这也是教的这门课的 proposal。
对，
哦，
我跟他讲。
Oh wait, also if there was like a time that you just scheduled with Shield, I can come either before or after
这
that. If it
这
makes
哎
it，
但是
easier
这个我不知道，就是你这个看数据了吗？
Tuesday.
就是
Oh wait,
我
wait, I think that. Wait, let me try really
Okay,
fast.
就是
But, yeah,
而
I
且我
think
现在很
Tuesday
看
at
到我的数
3:30.
据
I can come at like
有一个问题，
Tuesday
我
at
不知道为什么
3:45,
，ACS
3:30.
说
I have a class ends at 3:20.
ACS 说0到0.9年总共大概有
Looking forward to it.
8万个人出去，但是 Zipco Chain 说有第2年有80万。10 times difference. I don't know why. One explanation is that most of them came back the same year, so it wasn't captured by ACS.
Okay, so so how ACS asked this question?
In their sampling strategy.
Yeah.
我不知道，但是我确认过它是包括这些人的。
就是如果这些人他这一年